In this video I will try to explain what is ECS and how to use it in Unity. We will create project from scratch and implement gravity system. I will show you how easily you can add new features with components and systems. But first, let's answer the question: what is ECS? ECS is an architectural pattern where you need to interact with data instead of objects. ECS stands for Entities, Components and Systems. Let's break it down in more detail with an example. This box is our entity. It holds nothing and can do nothing. It's time to add some component to it. The entity now has a weight component with some data, but still nothing happens, because we don't have a system yet. Let's add a gravity system. This is the most precise copy of our planet. Gravity system works that way. It takes all entities with weight component and change their position towards gravity. That's it. Now let's simulate a gravity system in Unity using ECS package. I'm using editor version 2022.3.27, but for the later versions everything will be pretty much the same. For the template, let's choose Universal 3D Renderer Pipeline. Now enter the project name and hit Create Project. To be able to work with entities, we need to import Entities package. Go to Window, Package Manager, choose Unity Registry and search for Entities. Let's install the Entities Graphics package, because we need it to render entities. It will automatically install the Entities package with all dependencies. Now let's create our first entity. To do that, we need to create a new subscene. Let's name it Entities. Now create a cube inside the subscene. And that's it. Our first entity is ready. How can we know that this is an entity and not a game object? To confirm, let's open the Entities hierarchy, select our entity and switch to Runtime mode in the inspector window. Now we can see all the components of our entity. Regular game objects doesn't have such components. So let's make this cube fall under the force of gravity with ECS. First, I prefer to create separate folders for components and systems. In the components folder, let's create a new C# script, and this will be our gravity component. Then open the script in your editor. I'm using JetBrains Rider, but you can use whatever you want. Now let's get rid of this template code and import Entities package. Create gravity component. All components must implement iComponentData interface. We will use struct type because it is more efficient than class type. For the gravity, we need to know the weight of the entity and velocity to store the current impulse. Now let's create the Baker class to be able to convert Unity game object into entity. All converting logic will be in the bake method. First, we need to get the entity using method getEntity with transform usage flag dynamic argument, because our entity must be somewhere in the space. Then add our component with addComponent method. The values will be taken from the Unity inspector window as for a regular game object. Now let's return to Unity and drag gravity component to our cube. Let's set the weight equals 5. Now if we go to the play mode and switch to runtime mode in the inspector, we can see our gravity component. Let's finally make it fall. Create new C# script in the systems folder and name it gravity system. Delete all this code and import entities package. There are some different types of systems in Unity ECS, but I will show you the fastest, iSystem. It must be partial struct. Let's create onUpdate method and implement primitive gravity. Delta time must be taken from system API time delta time. Now we iterate over each entity that have our gravity component and local transform the position component. To be able to write in our components, we must specify ref read-write access. First, set the velocity based on the weight and delta time. It must be negative for the entity to fall down. Then change the position of the y-axis based on the velocity and delta time. That's it. Let's see the result. The cube successfully falls down under the gravity system. By the way, when we enter play mode, this loading window appears every time. Let's configure our project to be able to enter play mode instantly. Go to Edit, Project Settings, Editor, and check Enter Play Mode options. Now we can enter play mode without loading. Now I will show you how easily you can add new features to your project with ECS. First, let's make this cube stops at some point. I added this plane to see where is the 0 point. Let's modify the gravity system to stop at that point. We need to check if transform position y-axis less or equals 0, then continue. That's it. Let's check. The cube stops at point 0, but visually it looks like it falls through the floor. This happens because the pivot point of the default cube is located in the middle. Let's make a quick fix. First, create an empty game object in subscene. Make sure that this game object and the cube are both at 0 point. Then place cube under the cube entity object. Now the cube entity will be our main entity, so let's move gravity component to it. And finally, we need to shift the cube related to the cube entity to 0.5. Now it looks like the entity stands on the floor at the point 0. Let's check. Yep, everything is correct. Next feature is bouncing. It's really easy to implement. When we hit the point 0, add some velocity to the gravity component. Let's see the result. There it is. Now let's make it rotate while bouncing. To do that, we need to create rotation speed component. Then do the same actions as we did for the gravity component. Create component and implement bake method. There is one small difference for the rotation speed component struct. It holds only one field, so let's just name it value. Now let's create rotation system right here in the IDE. Go to the Systems folder and create new class. It will be the rotation system. Remove template code if you have it and begin with the same steps as for the gravity system. In for each cycle for the system API query, we need local transform with ref read-write permission and rotation speed component with ref read-only permission, because there is no need to modify rotation speed. For the rotation process, we need to set new transform made from the current transform with the method rotate_y based on rotation speed value and delta time. Okay, that's it. Now let's set our rotation speed component to the entity. Set speed for 2, for example, and see the result. The cube now rotating and bouncing. Let's add the final feature, moving forward. Create the new component, move speed. Do the same steps as we did for rotation speed component. Add new class and name it moving system. Do the same steps as before. This time in the for each cycle we need local transform for writing and move speed component for reading. To move the entity forward, let's add new value to the current position based on forward direction multiplied by move speed value multiplied by time delta time. Okay, now let's add move speed component to the entity. Set the speed, 3 for example, and see the result. The cube now bouncing, rotating and moving along the forward face. And that's it. It's easy to add new features in ECS, right? Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.